Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Demo Days of Garrett Browne. And here with me today, I have Jared Epstein from Timus Networks. Hope everybody's having a good Tuesday. Jared, how are you doing, sir?
Good morning, good afternoon. Feeling great, Garrett. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Good. Yeah, man. Yeah, you're calling in from Hawaii. You poor soul.
It's the sun is coming up. It's going to be a great day.
Oh yeah, I bet. Um, So for everybody who's joining, you're either on LinkedIn or you're on YouTube. Feel free to ask questions or leave comments in the comment section for the respective platform that you're on. I will see it, and I might even bring it up. It just depends on you know, uh, where Jared is and what topic. I would definitely do that, and I encourage you to definitely leave comments or ask questions for him. Um, and that being said, yeah, Jared, tell us about yourself and Timus Networks. What are we doing here today? What are we looking at?
Yeah. So I'll start with myself. My name is Jared Epstein. I'm the head of partnerships for Timus. I've spent my career working with MSPs in the MSP channel. Worked with a few different vendors with a few different product lines. But for the bulk of my professional career, my days have been spent in the channel working with MSPs day in and day out. Timus. So as a head of partnerships, all I do all day is talk to MSPs, but talking about network security, zero trust network access, and SASE, secure access service edge. So I'll go a little bit further into what that means, talk a lot more about Timus. But I get a lot of questions about, is it Timus? Is it Timus? Tell me about how to pronounce the company name and where did the name come from. And there's a gland in the thyroid called the thymus gland, which helps with immunity in the body. And our founder named the company Timus based off the thymus gland for it to essentially be a reference as cyber immunity.
Ah, interesting. So if I had seen that, oh, it's the Times Flat, I would have been, oh, it's Times Flat. Okay, all right, gotcha. Well, there's always a rhyme and reason behind all names. So, but it's an interesting one. So I wonder how you came across that. Is it medical school? Um, but we can ask him later one day. So, um, well, security and zero trust. I mean, that is the headline. Past year, several years, really, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of things surfaced up a little faster than we thought they would evolve. Um, so that is something that a lot of people are looking at, trying to figure out who's who. You have a lot of players that have been around a long time, but then you have players that are channel only, such as yourself. So for today, a lot of managed IT guys might be checking this out. So yeah, man. Do you want me to? You have a slide? Do you want to start with that, or what do you want to do?
I do. I believe I have a screen sharing up. Do you mind pulling it into the viewer?
Yeah, man. Yeah. There you go. It's all yours, brother.
Cool. So before I start, the words on here that say redefine how you work. The preface of Timus and kind of what we're looking to achieve with our solution is predicated on the fact that the modern working just situation in general is that the firewall can no longer be the end all to network security. Of course, it's important. Of course, the firewall, again, will forever have a place within the tech stack. But the fact that workers aren't sitting behind the firewall 24/7, and even if they are, most of that mission critical data, or a large percentage of it, is no longer sitting behind the firewall either. So with those two equations, again, in terms of we've redefined how we work, so now we have to redefine how we protect ourselves. So Timus is meant to be always on, built in the cloud, easy for the end user, easy for the administrator, and I'll go a lot further into that. But I wanted to preface as I get started with the why. Why are we even talking today? And it's those two reasons. Workers aren't in the office all the time, and data is not sitting in the office all the time. So the way that we connect and the way that we connect securely just has to change in terms of how we think about it. As an MSP dedicated vendor or channel dedicated vendor, there's three things that we need to do in all of our initiatives, and that's being easy to do business with, being easy to deploy, being scalable in our deployments, but also being easy to manage. And I'll talk a lot more about that and show that in real time through the demo today. And when we say existing solutions are never enough, this isn't like, VPN bad, Timus good, firewall bad, Timus good. It really goes back to what I started off with, right? It's just that the paradigm has shifted, like with everything else in the tech stack over the last 10 years, right? And it's time to think about the edge in just a different way than we have up to this point. Fortunately, Microsoft, whether you love them or hate them, we all have to live with them. They have pushed us forward with their conditional access policies within Entra that have enabled partners and those of you in attendance to have conversations with your clients about conditional access and ways to start to think about this. And that's a good segue in, because we know that we're not in the office, right? I know that's been kind of a bit of a being as a dead drum, right? Or being like a drum. And some people are back in the office, but it's a matter of the attack surface has changed. So it's not about where the people are. It's about the fact that it's always the new paradigm is people nothing is always in the same place. And what the bad actors are trying to access, again, is not behind the firewall. More often than not, it's sitting in the cloud, sitting in Entra. And more often than not, they get through the MFA token or the hosted applications, right? So it's a matter of, again, how do we reduce the attack surface and shrink it so you have a radius that you can actually protect. And that brings me to Timus and how we approach this. Right. So, and I'll get to the zero trust part at the end, or not the end, but I'll get to that next, because I want to talk about how do users actually connect, and a little bit about what does Timus actually do underneath the surface beyond the conceptual part that I've talked about up to this point. So Timus, is, from a product standpoint, is based on the user, not the machine, not the device. So each user gets up to 4 devices with their licensing, and that could be Windows, Mac, iOS, or Android. The composition doesn't matter. In the bottom right of the screen, you can see an agent profile, which essentially decides how does the agent behave on the machine, which can be dictated based on user team or a tag, for those company managed devices. Whether you like love them or hate them, unfortunately, some people have to live with them now in certain scenarios. But ultimately, you can decide: do you want this to always be on? Do you want users to have the ability to even be able to disconnect? And what are they connecting to? Oftentimes there's no on-site resources, right? Let's say there's no servers in the office. There's nothing to connect to there, but I'll talk about that because we can address that. All traffic will go from the endpoint through a Timus dedicated gateway. And what are those gateways? We have data centers around the world. So spread across North America, South America, Europe, Asia, et cetera. But within these data centers, you pick a region where the users are located primarily, and they can handle up to 100 users per concurrent, 100 users accounting for 4 connections, 4 devices per user. But the beauty of this is that each gateway is a private tunnel. So it's not shared. It's not just like pick a location and you tunnel through and everyone else has access to it. It's a dedicated tunnel that would be exclusive to that business or those users that you decide that have access to that tunnel. So going a level deeper, each tunnel has a private dedicated IP address. So everyone's first coming through the tunnel, and then from there you decide where do people go. So I say it all the time. Timus is essentially a single agent that gets users to wherever they need to get to, wherever that mission critical data is living. So it can be on-prem, right? We see that very frequently where we are replacing that traditional VPN that's attached to the firewall. Where first you would route through the Timus gateway through that private IP address. So from a security standpoint, on the road, showing the Timus IP, never actually showing your local firewall IP, helping with man-in-the-middle attacks. But first going through the gateway, and then we would build an IPsec tunnel to that local firewall. Timus is not telling you to throw out the firewall. We're not saying to get rid of the firewall. Oftentimes, partners come to us and say, "Hey, I don't need to get rid of my firewalls, but I need to get rid of having a $20,000 firewall renewal. So I need to protect and maybe put something a little bit less robust at the edge, or at the office because there's not as much to protect anymore. But we can connect to those firewalls regardless of the brand or the make that it is." The second part in the middle is, of course, everyone's accessing the web. So we do give you the ability to restrict access to sites or what we call safe browsing. And we have AV built in at the network layer. So at the network layer, this is all happening within the private gateway. None of this is happening at the endpoint. So all traffic is going through, and then you have that single point of entry to decide kind of what happens next. And then lastly, because everyone's coming in through a single IP address or a very small range of IP addresses, more and more tools are giving you the ability to control access based on IP. And that could be Entra with any licensed business premium or above. That could be an MSP with your RMM tool. That could be your documentation tools. The list is growing, and that's great for our industry. But taking a step back, again, always on connection, taking users to wherever they need to go to. It's incredibly easy for the end user. I want to harness on that. If it's built to always be on, this is not something that has necessarily the black eye that I guess the legacy way of the old school VPNs would carry.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. There's a lot of VPNs that can be kind of difficult. People don't know what they're looking at. So, yeah.
One common question I get is what type of overhead what type of degradation would you expect, right? Because typically there is some type of degradation with any form of a VPN or encrypted traffic. And we offer two different protocols, either Open VPN or WireGuard. We let you decide. And we typically see that the maximum degradation would be 15 to 20% at the most as a point of reference.
Yeah.
Garrett, any questions on the architecture here? I know I took a second to really kind of dive in and touch on a few different points, but.
No. I understand it. It's pretty straightforward. It's interesting especially the VPN aspect. I definitely want to see some more.
Yep. And so ultimately we're thinking about like attack surface shrinking, right? You have your office, you have your, let's say, single static IP address. Now, how do you make sure that someone doesn't breach your, let's say, knock on wood, someone doesn't breach your Entra credentials, right? And they also take your MFA token, and they also figure out that you're running a VPN and they can now get in. That's where the whole zero trust part comes into play, where how do we make sure that a bad actor can't get into your private network? And I'll show this in the actual portal itself. But in the beginning, I touched on Microsoft's conditional access policies. Timus in itself integrates with any IDP that's out there, whether through SAML 2.0 or directly through Entra, Google, Okta, etc. But upon login, let's say using Entra for the example, because that's the example that I hear the most. If you're integrated with Entra, those conditional access policies that you've predefined are actually going to carry through within the login, because when someone authenticates through Timus, it's going to redirect them. So those CAP policies will carry. A device posture check, and these behaviors is what we call them listed, are Timus's extended version of this, which is our zero trust components. You can use these behaviors to essentially air gap your network or put in adaptive MFA as an example. And an example would be if someone's coming in from an untrusted IP outside of their normal geographic zone, you can enforce MFA in that specific instance. Or it senses that it's a new device and you want to air gap the network altogether, it's just going to deny access because it's coming from a different MAC address. So I'll talk more about this because this is the keys that kind of secure the kingdom. Not much more slides here, I promise. Just want to cover a few more things. From a compliance standpoint, I'll have this listed here. If anyone wants copies of this or has more questions on this, please reach out after and happy to discuss.
Did I see a cybersecurity insurance reduction on that, like a discount?
So oftentimes in the conversation around compliance also comes to cyber insurance policy. And we have several partners that have come back and told us, hey, by going back and talking about how traffic is always encrypted and access to the mission critical resources coming from a single IP address that we have full control over, and we have full control over not just the users that are coming in, but also the devices when they're coming in, that was able to reduce their premium.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, okay.
So before I go into the actual multi-tenant partner portal, show you what a configuration would look like and show you with the tool underneath the hood, I do like to pull up, show this last core functionality in case there's some features and functions that I haven't touched on yet. What I found here, though, when you mix networking and security together, oftentimes it can get overly complicated where people find it's easy for people to make it overcomplicated for themselves. But the beauty of it is you can set up a tenant in 15 minutes, a whole network. So I'll walk you through that when we get into the actual portal, how simple we've made it. Garrett, any questions here before I pivot over to showing stuff outside the slide deck?
No, I'm just looking at all the functionality. There's definitely a lot here. No, yeah, you definitely have my interest. So definitely want to see what you got.
Cool. So the next thing I want to show, because everything that we do is built for our partners and also from the voice of our partners. So whether it's our roadmap and feature requests coming from our partner advisory board or our partners, et cetera, just a community is very important to us. That goes into maturity around documentation and being able to reach people and get what answers you need when you need them. So we have plenty of documentation around getting set up, feature requests, different use cases and how to apply them based on the use case that you're bringing. Live chat directly to our support team within this portal, as well as ticket management here, which is integrated from our partner portal as well. But just wanted to highlight this as we know that scalability and being self-sufficient is incredibly important to the partner base.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Can I tell you how many times I tried to reach out to somebody because I can't find something on knowledge base? Go to Google, can't find it. So it's good to see that the fact that you brought this up first says a lot, as opposed to an afterthought.
Yeah, thank you. And it's something that to your point, when you need an answer, you need an answer, especially when it's going from end user to MSP to the vendor. We know when it's already reached those different layers of communication, you need an answer quick.
Yeah.
So next, I'm going to bring into our multi-tenant partner portal. And as I show the actual tool itself, please note for the viewers in attendance, we can make this white labeled. Everything from the multi-tenant partner portal to the individual networks that I show you to the actual agent itself can be white labeled to your own branding. So one of the first things I want to show is how we essentially kind of practice what we preach. And within the Timus partner portal, you can restrict administrators from accessing your networks based on IP address. So most commonly, we see this from our partners using their own Timus IPs, plus maybe their office as an example. But really kind of MSPs adopting the idea of we're really locking our tools down behind, again, very specific resources and not just trusting MFA.
Yeah. That's cool.
Are there little things again, it's all about enablement for us within the partner portal itself, our documentation, so you don't have to reach out to me or my team if you don't want to. Find what you need to share with clients or with your team internally. And then from a deployment standpoint, making this as easy as possible. We know that a lot of this has become templatized for MSPs. Everything is about standard operating procedures in 2024, right? How do we repeat the same procedures over and over and be as efficient as possible? So that goes from deployment to management. And so from a deployment perspective, sometimes, you might have a medical client, you might have a law firm client, you might have a client that has a VPN. So you can have different templates that you can then use to pre-configure a tenant, where any customizations would go on top of it would just be a few minutes and a few clicks, but really just a way to kind of get yourself started. And then we have the multi-tenant dashboard where you can add customers, edit customers, and SSO directly into individual networks.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. That's definitely a big one. Yeah.
So typically when I come in here for a demo, what I want to show is how easy it is to actually set it up. And so when I come into an individual network, the first thing I do is I come to integrations, as this would be step number one. And the first thing we would do is we would sync the IDP and bring in the users. I keep hearing this phrase that we're moving towards a passwordless world. And fortunately for SAML 2.0, that enables that to be the case. So you can integrate directly with Entra, you could integrate directly with Google Workspace, Okta, et cetera, or you could do it with SAML. And the difference between integrating with Entra or integrating Entra with SAML would be launching the app through myapps.microsoft, where the user will never actually be able to have to type in their password ever. I'll come back to where and why we see integrations with Bitdefender, Microsoft Defender, Heimdall, and SentinelOne. That's used for device isolation and different security components, which I'll come back to.
Could I add a custom, not a custom, but if I had API credential keys and stuff, could I add my own integration, or do I need to come to you guys to request one?
So good question. So we will open up certain components based on request.
Mm-hmm.
This could be for like we've opened it up for like AI tools built into PSAs that can help onboarding and offboarding of users. This
Yeah.
has also been used for pulling data out and bringing it into for SIM and other forms of security consolidation.
Okay, that's good.
And I would say within our feature request tabs and that support portal that we see, I would say 70% of the feature requests are around different integrations of different tools that partners want.
Oh, I'd imagine, yeah.
What's interesting though is it's as more and more tools come out, it's getting harder to accommodate to everyone, but we're certainly trying. But if I come through and then let's say we've synced the users in, let's say it's a 15-person law firm, right? They're starting, we're replacing their VPN, and they're going fully remote. What I've done is I've synced in my users. Now I can decide how do my users connect, and you could have several different policies in the agent profiles based on user, team, or tag. But this is, do you want users to be able to have the ability to disconnect?
Yeah.
And if so, if they need to disconnect, who gets notified? And because we want this to be totally touchless, right? We're thinking of what was wrong and why did people really dislike the old way of using the firewall VPNs, and how do we make that end user experience easier? If we have this to be always on, and then it's a hybrid user and they go into the office, for it to remain touchless, we need to be able to put in a trusted network. So when they're behind that firewall, it will know not to go out to the Timus and then go back into the firewall. So when the user gets in and they sit down at their desk, the agent will disconnect. When they leave the office, it will automatically reconnect.
So if you don't mind me asking, so like, let's just say I'm gonna integrate with Intra, or it's just basically Microsoft, everything, Defender, and I'm using the Azure VPN or anything like that. Like, do you guys detect that, or is that, hey, do we already detect a VPN already being used via your integration, or how does that? Or I just need to say, I'm going to turn this off, move to you guys, or what does that look like?
Good question. So you would deploy Timus out through either your RMM tool or through Intune via like a PowerShell or MSI.
Mm-hmm.
You would decide where the user is located. You'd spin up a gateway or multiple based on the region. As I mentioned, global presence. That would come online in about 6 to 8 minutes with a dedicated static IP address. And then all we would do is we would build a connector via IPsec to HQ, let's say. And we would do a standard IPsec configuration of a phase 1, phase 2 parameters.
Yeah.
And this could be to any firewall that allows for IPsec. Okay. And it doesn't have to be a firewall. You can build an IPsec tunnel directly to an Azure VM. You could do the same thing to an AWS VM.
Okay, well, that's nice.
So from the user standpoint, basically you'd push it out to the users. They would see Timus on their machine. You'd have them log in with their Microsoft credentials.
Mm-hmm.
It would automatically connect. And as long as this was configured here and that connection has been established from Timus to the office, that user can then effectively work and reach those local resources as needed without any other intervention from the user.
With the user, if I log into my laptop, is it inheriting the login through that, or I'll see the Timus app and then you log in again through using Microsoft?
So there's 2 ways of doing it, and that's where those profiles are dependent. So you can have it where if you have these checked off, right, and you log into and I log in, I come back from lunch, my computer's sleeping, I log in from Windows, it launches, it connects, that's it. You can have this for, let's say, for personal machines, or let's say the directors of the users that don't want this, that are allowed to. And that's where you can separate into different policies based on different source.
Cool, I like it.
Yep. Again, meant to be simple for the end user, simple for the MSP.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we pull some incredible information and telemetry off the agent, which then can be used for device posture checks. And examples of just agent information that we're pulling, we can see everything from the type of device to the security that's living on the machine, storage, processes, services. Because when you're building a device posture check, you want to figure out, okay, what are the unique identifiable traits that I know that this combination of traits says to me that this device is a safe device that's within my network, right? That could be the certificate or the process of your RMM running plus one other unique identifiable object, or two, or three. You have that option to build those policies out. And one other last thing here, and I don't want to get stuck into a rabbit hole, but I'm talking a lot about the gateways and architecture going through the tunnel first.
Mm-hmm.
One of the nice things with Timus is you can go peer-to-peer, and you can circumvent the gateway by putting Timus onto any machine that can run Windows or Mac. And what you would do is you would put the agent on it. You can assign that device. So that could be a server, that could be a desktop, that could even be a mobile phone. And you can assign that device a static IP address on the Timus network. Whatever IP address you want, you could assign it the host name.
Yeah.
And this would allow users connected to Timus to reach it as if they're on the same network, regardless of where they are. So alternative to the IPsec connection, this is just the alternative.
So I don't need the machine name. I could just, that's the friendly name, sort of. So, right? So, okay.
Yep. So
All
this
right.
would be for, the use case here would be for if you have a server, let's say in a data center in a colo that you don't have full access to you don't have full management of the firewall functionality. Or if it's a shared workspace and there isn't a firewall there and you want people to be able to safely ping into a machine.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's a small office and you don't necessarily want to build an IPsec tunnel, but you want a user to basically RDP into their machine, they can be set by IP or host name.
Okay. All right.
So from a configuration standpoint, let's assume we pulled in a bunch of users, we set up their gateways and regions, we set a connector to their local office. This is where the cloud firewall comes into play. And oftentimes there's not this many rules. This is us kind of trying to show the scalability here.
Mm-hmm.
But for those on the call that haven't looked at a ZTNA or SASE tool altogether, part of the reason why the traditional VPNs are always coming under attack is because once you get access to it, you have the keys to the kingdom. Once you get into the network, you have full lateral access to ping whatever you can. If you know where to find it, it's open for the taking. With Timus, because everyone's coming in through a central point of entry to the network, we have control over where does that user from that device, what do they have access to once they pass that through the tunnel. So instead of giving everyone access to everything, by default, we have an implicit deny rule, which I have as rule 0, with an allow rule for the internet above that. So basically instead of having everything open, we're going to only open up resources on-prem to users, teams, and tags to basically resources that have permission to granted, rather than and only containing them to a very small radius, rather than giving everyone the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
An example of putting in that rule would be, sales access. And you could do it based on, again, user, team, tag, device, etc. And I could open it up based on IP, device, location. So you can get you can make this as granular or customized as you'd like.
Oh, yeah, definitely looks like it. I like that.
And then web categories, because again, you're coming through, we have the ability to control again who gets access to what web categories and when. So within here, you can have your predefined categories. The backbone to this, by the way, for the viewers is Velo, which is used by some of the other major firewall brands that are out there. So we don't source this list ourselves. We white label this. And this is where I'll come back to the partner portal, where I say most often partners have a kind of like how you would with a different DNS filtering tool, some type of category list that you have predefined that you would use as a template when setting up a tenant here, rather than input this every single time.
Yeah.
Garrett, any questions thus far?
Hey, can you go back one? I saw service on there. Can I? Um, yeah, I've got down to the bottom. So, oh, okay. So I'm able to create a rule around specific services. Um,
Yes.
okay,
So an
that's
example would
cool.
be if you wanted the sale, let's say we have 4 teams. We have a sales team, we have a marketing team,
Hmm.
we have a development team, and a support team. And sales and marketing should be able to access the internet, HTTP, HTTPS, but they shouldn't be able to do DNS or SQL, etc.
Okay, all right, that's cool. All right, yeah, I like that because there's a lot of like, hey, there's different ways to do that, but you just, especially from an attack perspective. So that's
Yep.
okay.
Yep. And that's where I wanted in the very beginning, going back to, and for viewers that joined after I was finished with the slide deck, Timus is really here to minimize the attack surface. We're putting
Yeah,
all traffic through a single IP address or a very small range, handling up to 100 users. But the purpose of that is to control all traffic and minimize your attack surface behind a very small range of IP addresses.
yeah. Just I want to jump in here real quick. So for those of you who are watching live, if you are joining, feel free to leave a comment or ask a question for Jared. I'll pull it up, and yeah. Also, because it's being recorded, you could always revisit after and leave comments, and see we can get in touch with you and Jared after that. Go ahead, bro. All yours. Just want to make sure people understood. They can ask questions live.
Yes. So in the very, very beginning, I touched on like how this has been a evolving like ZTNA and SASE, from what I hear from our partners, has layered in very nicely to the conversations they've had with clients, because they've recently had conversations about upgrading their Microsoft licensing, right? To have either business premium or above that has the Entra suite, which gives you
Mm-hmm.
the ability to have those conditional access policies and IP-based control. When integrated with Timus, those conditional access policies will follow that user. But when I'm in the portal here, I'm under the Zero Trust Security page. So when someone goes to log in from Timus, they open up their computer, they're authenticating from Timus. We're scanning these behaviors every single time. So new device, out of radius, which you can customize with geofencing, new country, impossible travel, last sign-in date, untrusted IP address, breached email, consecutive failures, and device posture check. The only thing that these all have in common is that they're indicative of someone that might not be who they say they are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So between your Microsoft conditional access policies and this is meant to make sure that nobody can take your credentials, take your MFA token, use Timus to then get into your network. So now applying these behaviors, this will essentially, the user sign-in policies, while not necessarily a fancy name, is essentially the firewall rules to allow users access and devices access into the network. And this can be done based on user, team, tag, or a location itself. So this is where and I'll use the example of, I guess, like walking into an airport, right? There might be 100 doors to the building, maybe more. But then when you walk in, depending on the time of day, on the volume, there might be 1, 2, 3, 4 lines to TSA, where they check your boarding pass, they check your ID, and based on your permission, you can enter and you can go to the right gate. This is that TSA line for the user when entering into the network. It's checking the source of their machine, their location, their user, and then it's looking at all of these different behaviors. And then you can say, based on specific behaviors, maybe I want to have an additional security screening, or I just want to deny that person access to the airport altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Some conditions that might deny access altogether could be a new device altogether, right? No one should be coming in with a new ID. Impossible travel, can't move faster than can't be in 2 places at once. And then we would set those conditions, and then we would decide the action as just deny. And then your SOC, your NOC, your team internally would be notified accordingly.
So
go ahead.
Okay, so this is Could you pull that back up again, if you don't mind? The conditions and alerts. And let's just say I have somebody, that geofencing, or you guys determine the geofencing, right? You could do that, okay. And then and then you could do it. All right. There we go.
So I can do like, so for specific teams, I can say like, channel program geofence.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's say maybe it's 150 miles, and I want to compare from the last 5 locations that they had logged in from.
Okay. Oh yeah, because I know people move around, and sometimes they're in different offices. So I like that, the last 5. So basically 150 miles from the prior 5 locations. So that's pretty. I like that. Yeah,
Yep.
that saves a lot of time. I had to put in everything.
Yep. And when doing this, and when going through these best practices with like a new partner, for example, we'll usually compare like, what do you have as a best practice within your conditional access policies, and where is there, like, where can we overlap here that doesn't necessarily impact the user from like the user experience perspective, but how can we how can we best secure this using the 2 components plus the device posture check. And then you would have multiple policies like again, so like here we would have like, again, I see air gap, no new devices.
Yeah.
So like all users, any type of new device, deny. And then alternatively, just one other policy I want to show. Typically we'll see, okay, we have our policy set up within our IDP that can trigger MFA, but what are the additional ones that I definitely want someone to re-authenticate from? Maybe they're connecting from an airport and an untrusted IP. It could be they haven't signed in 2 weeks. And then you'd come up with those examples there, right? Maybe they're coming in from a new country and you do want to allow that because they do travel. Define that action to be maybe an MFA authenticator app. And you could also define a second step. Let's say they also pass that authenticator app. Do I also want to send an email?
Yeah.
Alternatively, let's say they fail that authenticator app and it's the owner of a business who always messes up their token, and we always have to give them a second chance. I want to give them a second chance if they're traveling. So you can like all of this incredibly customizable depending on how you want to build this out.
It said send authentication emails instruction setup. Is that do you have your own MFA sort of app, or what was?
No, so that's a good question. So we know that the channel has done a great job of educating their clients as to why MFA is needed over these last several years, and also to get in the habit of using it every day. So we don't have our own MFA authenticator app, and we also don't tell partners which authenticator app to use.
Okay.
Oftentimes, partners will use the same one that's they're integrating with through, or they'll, but essentially they'll be able to scan here to have a new token.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
To answer that directly.
Yeah. That could be a big deal. It's like, we got to move to a whole new thing, and so okay, that's good. There's a lot of nice flexibility there. So
yeah. There's 2 sides. There's just 2 sides to the adoption within this product segment that I see. There's the users that are coming from using a VPN now that are just happy to kind of have any type of better user experience. Then you have the users that don't have any type of agent on their computer from a connectivity standpoint that are definitely going to be more sensitive. In any which case, you want to make sure that the end user experience is impacted as minimal as possible, while obviously securing the network as much as possible. And that's where these best practices, we can toggle it to make sure that we accommodate both. There's a few other things I want to show under insights, pretty self-explanatory, but just we know from whether it's the MSP itself, whether it's their IR, hopefully not, or their outside teams, you need to be able to find what's happening within the network. So detailed visibility as to logs, events, which are when, where, and how are users logging in, how are they trying to log in, IP intelligence, things that you don't want to have to look at, but that you can find if you need to.
Yeah. No, this kind of stuff I could look at all day long, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Again,
we're geeks. What do we do?
Yeah. Again, it's great to show, but I can't imagine this is something that people want to really have. not something you typically look at in a good scenario.
Yeah.
A couple other things here, and then I'll field questions. But automated reporting, this is something that can be sent to internal staff that could also be sent to external staff. What's typically included in those reports, it could be traffic, it could be login events, it could be, a lot of times we see reports around productivity. I haven't talked about this yet. This could be turned on or off based on the user or the device. If you don't want to put it on do this on a BYOD machine naturally. But it's cool because it's not looking at browser history. It's looking at the overall screen time, and it's looking at what is the dominant tab on the screen, and it's looking at, is it productive, unproductive, or is it neutral? And it's giving that user, that team, and that organization an overall productivity score. And you can drill in to see much more detailed information, but we try to keep it high level from a reporting standpoint to give that business owner information on those out of office users that they definitely want. Which we are told from our partners that this is definitely a nice value add, that they can kind of have this automatically dropped into their, let's say, business owner's email box on every Friday or once a month. Although we know that this is a bit of up for interpretation based on the owner and their discretion if they want to, or the decision maker if they want to put this on their users' machines. But this is the stuff that could be put into automatic reporting. Most active users, productive users, teams, etc.
So you can go to applications, and does it show you? So okay. So this is just per user I'm looking at here, or just
so. And this is so excuse some of the data in the demo environment, but if I go into like this user, for example, I can see in Excel what tab, like what Excel file they were looking at and how long they were actually looking at that file for. So so the example would be like, right now I have 30 tabs open. It's calculating my screen time on our video streaming platform as the screen time here. It's not accounting for any of the other time, the tabs being open at the moment.
That's 10 seconds is for some platforms is a very short period of time. They won't even show you that. You have to be like 25 seconds, 30 seconds. So what's the minimum time? Is that 2 seconds? I know that's kind of a trivial question, but sometimes it's like 5 seconds and junk.
Right, can change everything. That's a good question. I don't want to give the wrong answer. I'll get back to you.
Oh, you're good. That's not going to make a break or anything. Just out of curiosity, So that admin knowledge. Yeah. So
one fun fact about this component of the tool is you don't have to be connected for this to work. As long as someone's logged in, it will work. And why this is brought up is because if it is a hybrid user and let's say they're in the office 3 days a week and they don't need to connect while they're in the office, this will continue to run as long as you want them to be logged in.
Yeah. What's the if you don't mind me asking, I thought device posture reports. What was that?
Yes, so there's two or three last things that I want to talk about, which are all security based as I kind of wrap the actual portal.
Okay. Yeah. Here. Sorry. Go ahead.
So one of them is going back to like, how do we actually connect, right? And when I think about BYOD users, different users with different machines, different scenarios, and a lot of just different variables here. The way that the tunneling configuration might be different based on the needs. And what I'm getting at here is split tunneling. So by default, all traffic is going through our gateway, and you can exclude IPs and domains. There's no limit to it. So you can exclude, like Reddit, for example, and all of its subdomains with one entry. Well, why I wanted to show this is oftentimes, and for a BYOD user or even an MSP, for example, that might have different VPNs to different clients and they're always on the road, right? They might want to put everything through the internet, trust other tools, and have only their mission critical traffic go through the Timus VPN, where you can do like, I'm not going to put any vendor names, but you can do like your RMM tool, your documentation tool. So what we're doing, and let's say the IP address of the tunnel to your office. So essentially taking in your SaaS applications plus your tunnel to your office or your connection to your office and putting it all into one simple connectivity and excluding everything else. So by default, everything is going through the tunnel, but you can flip it and go the opposite route.
That's cool. So I could, VPN. I could have like a very specific subpage on my website that has to require a VPN. Yeah, so, okay, like
Correct.
that.
Specific websites, specific applications. So you can say, I don't know, like Sentinel-1. You can say, again, and you could use again, insert tool name here, and we can put it through. The next piece, so this ties back into this will cover device posture check as well, like the reporting, as well as user and device isolation.
Mm-hmm.
So one component of it is dynamic tags. So everyone, I know that all partners know and all MSPs know what tags are. I know that that's a pivotal part of how you organize your users, your devices, et cetera, and how you also deploy. But so in the beginning, I touched on, and I'd like to go back, we integrate with Bitdefender, currently Heimdall, Microsoft Defender, Sentinel-1, and we're constantly expanding to this list. Heimdall is very new. These endpoint protection solutions are picking up incredible data off the endpoint, and we know that there's agent fatigue on these devices. So we want to trust our device posture check, but we also want to integrate and close loop your tools as much as possible. So what we can say here from a tag standpoint, and what I'm getting at, is you can have multiple tags based on these tools and what they're pulling out. So if you're using, let's say, Microsoft Defender, and Sentinel-1 Defender is telling you that your exposure level is equal to high, right? And we can have several of these, and for the sake of time, I'll jump out. But I can have several dynamic tags that are coming from these tools. It could be malware detected, agent not installed, not encrypted, etc. But what we can do then with those dynamic tags is then isolate users and machines based on it with the firewall rules. So I can then take device isolation, source, I can do tag, and I can choose all of my dynamic tags, right? And so they're coming, because it's coming in a real-time integration. Once Defender clears up that device, it's moved out, that user would be able to work again. Same thing with any of the other ones. But I can say, Defender is not installed, high risk, malware detected. These have no business accessing my internal resources, right, or my mission critical resources. I'm going to deny access to the full network until those are cleared up. So they'd be able to run through the internet, but they wouldn't be able to, or they'd be able to access everything except really, well, in this scenario, nothing. But you can make it where you can block everything but specific resources. So this is I'd say a fan favorite amongst the partner base.
Yeah, I would totally be tagging those right now. So,
and going back to policy migration for viewers in attendance, we can set this up in a few minutes. But again, this is not something that is typically done over and over and over. Typically, there's a standard template or a few standard templates that you can do. Like again, you're going to, when you set up a customer, I'm going to make sure those tags, those MFA policies, and those firewall rules are consistent across the board. Making sure that configuration time is minimum.
That's nice. Yeah, it saves a lot of time on that. I was just wondering, I was like, is this going to be something, you got to set for each person? But yeah.
No.
It's a very nice way to spread it out quickly.
Correct. And last thing, as you mentioned, device posture check. You can separate by the posture check pulled, but you can see reporting based on past trend over time, dates, the devices that we're running.
So posture check, I know this is a demo account, so there's not much here, but the posture would be looking at what variables really just sort of, but like kind of those tags, like out of date, antivirus definitions or none, or malware, or.
So you can layer it into two different places. You can take malware, or you could take AV, not malware. You could take like looking for specific services. Like you want to make sure that your AV is running. You want to make sure that your process, like your RMM is running, and you also want to make sure that XYZ specific certificate is on the machine. You can also layer on top through the if let's say you're using Defender or one of the EPPs that we integrate with, you can add on specific attributes that we pull from there and add those in to the device posture check. Which partners do, because that, again, you trust your endpoint protection tool ultimately over kind of everything.
Yeah. That's cool. This is very well rounded. There's a lot here. This is absolutely something you can really lock this down. You know, the zero trust aspect, and um, you know, like I said, this is something that I, I could sit here all day long just to go through. You know, and really, especially starting up onboarding as things come in, just really, you know, soaking in you know, the data you guys are pulling, what's the ability. I like the integrations. I think it's interesting. Um, and so, just if I have an employee who is, say, Colombia, Egypt, just all over the place, could I sort of say, you know, you have the traveling, you know, new country, things like that. Can I plan that? Like, I know they're going to be in this country, this state, or maybe my CEO, he's going to be in Paris. Like, can I go ahead and say, I know he's going to be in Paris next week. These are the times. Can we do something like that, or how's that look like?
You can create a separate rule for different users.
Yeah.
And you can schedule it, right? So like if the behavior is so it's done Monday through Friday, so it has to be
Yeah.
kind of repetitive. If you have, like, let's say a CEO, for example, that's constantly traveling, you can make it where, let's say, every other user can't access, like, if they try to connect from a different country, they're going to get denied access altogether. Whereas for this user, because they're a known traveler, we're going to require MFA.
Yeah. Okay. Huh.
I think the biggest thing to note here is, like, going back to those two kind of realities of, like, and people aren't in the office, or if they are, I mean, I think everyone, even if you're accessing it from your phone, people are, even if you're in the office 5 days a week, you're working from outside the office to some capacity at some times.
Yeah.
And so outside of MFA or traditional VPN, what does securing the edge look like for you? And that's where Timus is there to come in and really can shrinking the attack surface.
I like it. So, is there the dashboard? Can I see sort of a summary of all my clients? Of like, hey, something's going. Okay, so I can see any like you have high risk, so I can zoom in real quick to see across all my tenants who's who, and okay.
So this is one individual network. The multi-tenant partner portal has where we'd see the customers, where
Hmm.
each network is separate, where we'd then SSO into the network that would look just like where we are
Oh,
here.
okay. All right. Gotcha. All right. So,
And this can be reported on automatically as well, where you can actually pull in the map. And if I hover over, I can see where the failed logins, successful lockouts, etc.
oh yeah, man. That's especially, you know, real quick. Somebody's you know, sharing their credentials, right? So,
Correct.
yes. I like it. So, is there a way? Do you have like a way to, like, you know, I'm sharing with tenants, like, co-manage? Like, say I have a tenant I manage. Can I allow anybody from their company to come in? So they have an IT guy on site. We're coming in to, you know, to help them.
Yeah.
I can allow them in.
We typically we see that a lot, where you can have a third party administrator
Mm,
strictly for that specific network.
yeah.
Where we would also have, under zero trust, admin sign-in policies.
Hmm.
But yes, co-manage is something that we see quite frequently.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. I came across that a lot myself too. So, um, it really gave you a different perspective on, you know, what you were using, what they needed, you know, things like that, because they were usually the first guys that would respond to their team, and then they can't do anything. They come to you, you know. So that was definitely, you know, a reality of that. Is there any? I don't see why you would, but is there any white labeling of any sort?
There is. So we can white label
There is.
the actual manager, the interface that you see here. So if you're doing a co-managed sale, you can have the actual UI white labeled. We can also white label the agent itself.
Oh, okay.
For the users, where it will have, you can put your whatever logo you want in there with your own color schemes as well.
That's cool. Yeah. Um, Huh. All right.
And
I like it.
Garrett, just to note one other thing for the partners in attendance or MSPs in attendance. Our model works where each user gets up to 4 machines. There's at least one gateway per tenant, but there's no charge for IPsec tunnels. There's no limit for IPsec tunnels, and there's no cost for traffic. So we try to make it very simple, per user and per gateway, and only working with our channel partners.
All right. So with the VPN, like internet speeds, things like that, like what is that? How's that looking for?
So it depends on the ISP in terms of like if some ISPs really hate WireGuard. So in those scenarios, we'll have a user use an open VPN. That's like I would say sub 1% of all connections, but assuming no edge cases, it should be maybe 5 to 15% of degradation.
Okay,
but not noticeable to the user.
Yeah, that's not bad. I've seen stuff that's on 50, 60%. You're just like, why do we even bother? All right. Well, Jared, I'm gonna start wrapping this up. But is there any last words you want to say for a bit? It'll be recorded, after the fact too. So if there's anything you want to put out there, it's been good. I really like what you guys are doing. It makes a whole lot of sense, and this solves a big problem, a management problem. Also, this is a complex thing to embrace, like just split tunneling, VPNs. Back in the day, it was just like, hey, you hope you have a Cisco ASA certified, guy, and then it was. But I think you guys, this is really good because I'm looking at this like, man, people don't have no clue how complicated, you're like switching and going. It's easy trying to L1. It's like now everybody just takes email and browsers, forget it. But I don't think people really understand how complicated it is, what's happening behind the scenes. So I like what you guys have done here and really brought this to a very manageable and easy way to, take something complicated to digestible.
Thank you. I'd say in parting words and thoughts, I think my message to the community would be to not be intimidated by like to your point, some of the complicated or the complications that go into it, right? IPsec tunnels, different protocols, the overall intricacies of networking, right? I think it's on the vendor community like Timus to simplify that for you as the service provider to deliver a simple solution to your clients where it works for the clients, it works for you. It's not a nightmare to set up. It's not a nightmare to support. And that's on us to deliver to you. And I would suggest for anyone interested, take us for a spin. We do free trials. We know that this is very conceptual, so you don't need to kind of touch it, feel it, take it for a test drive yourself.
All right, so you guys are just channel on like strictly channel?
Yes.
Nice. How long have y'all been around?
The overall company, 6 years.
All right, cool. I say because I see some companies coming out like in 3 months, and you're like, oh. Hang in there, but 6 years is definitely a run. So cool. Well, Jared, I appreciate it, and thank you for everybody for watching. We didn't really have any comments or anything, but it doesn't mean that your comment, if you leave one after we're done, won't change, because I know Timus, they'll definitely be able to jump on and answer any questions with you if you want to connect with them. Definitely check their website out. Was it timusnetworks.com or?
Timusnetworks.com, yes.
All right. Or you can come to channelprogram.com and check the reviews out. Because those reviews are from what I always call, from the trenches, from MSPs who've been there, they understand, have handled it. It's not just somebody throwing something out there. So we vet and verify everybody. But Jared, this has been awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I will let you go so you can go surf, enjoy the beaches of Hawaii or Seoul. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you all very much, and I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping this up. All right, take care, everybody.
It's been great being here, Garrett. Thank you.
You're welcome.